The galaxy you know in the 41st millennium is a nightmare. A dark age where 1 trillion human souls live and die under the rule of the Imperium. But humanity's road to this grim reality was not inevitable. In fact, it almost ended long before it began. Imagine a time when humanity stood at its peak. A golden age when technology could build cities in days, terraform worlds in years, and send colonists to the farthest stars. It was an age when artificial intelligences managed entire civilizations, and humanity was united not by war but by progress. It was perhaps the last time humans truly knew peace. And then, everything collapsed. Warp storms tore across the galaxy, cutting world from world. The artificial minds that had guided mankind turned against their creators in a war that shook reality itself. Billions of human colonies were left isolated. Civilizations starved, fought, and fell to ruin. The galaxy became a patchwork of feudal kingdoms, petty warlords, and nightmare empires ruled by psychers who could barely control their own minds. On Terra, the cradle of humanity, techno-barbarians fought endless wars with weapons of mass destruction, turning continents into radioactive wastelands. Humanity teetered on the edge of extinction. The dream of a united species was gone. The galaxy belonged to chaos, and survival meant becoming as brutal as the horrors lurking in the void. And then, from the shadows of history, he appeared. A figure who would be remembered only as the Emperor of mankind. A warlord, a visionary, a being of impossible power. He would not just save Terra, he would forge a new Imperium from the ashes of the old. And his dream would shape the next 10,000 years of human history. But before we can speak of the Emperor, we must first understand the nightmare he was born to end. Welcome to the Age of Strife. Long before the Imperium, humanity reached its true height. Historians call it the Golden Age of technology, and for good reason. It was an age when science had become indistinguishable from magic. Standard template constructs, or STCs, held the secrets to every machine a civilization could need, from farming drones to entire cities in a box. A single data core could turn a barren rock into a thriving colony in a matter of years. Humanity spread across the stars, colonizing thousands of worlds. Faster than light travel was routine, warp routes were stable, and each planet could still talk to Terra as if it were next door. Massive robotic armies defended these colonies, and artificial intelligences known as the Men of Iron handled logistics, economy, and even war. For perhaps the first time in history, war between humans nearly ceased. With abundance everywhere, there was no reason to fight over resources. Civilizations thrived, art and philosophy flourished, and humanity began to see itself not as 1,000 nations, but as a single species destined to master the galaxy. But perfection has a price. The Men of Iron, those thinking machines built to serve mankind, eventually turned on their creators. The wars that followed burned across countless worlds. The machines were finally defeated, but humanity was changed forever. From this moment on, intelligent machines would be forbidden, seen as abominations that could never again be trusted. Still, the scars of the Men of Iron War were nothing compared to what came next. The warp, that strange psychic dimension humanity had barely begun to understand, turned against them. Immense storms raged through the Imperium, making faster-than-light travel nearly impossible. Entire sectors were cut off for centuries. Some worlds survived in isolation. Others fell into savagery, ruled by psychers who were driven mad by the whispers of demons. And some were simply consumed by chaos and never heard from again. This was the true beginning of the Age of Strife. And as the galaxy tore itself apart, one man began to prepare, watching from the shadows, gathering power and waiting for the moment to strike, the man who would become the Emperor. The Golden Age was over. The galaxy had turned into a graveyard of forgotten colonies. And nowhere was the nightmare more real than on Terra, the cradle of mankind. When the warp storms came, Terra's communication with the stars was cut off. Global trade collapsed overnight. Megacities turned to war over dwindling resources. Old nation-states shattered, replaced by warlords armed with weapons left over from the dark age of technology. They were called techno-barbarians, savage rulers who commanded armies of genetically enhanced soldiers, chemical weapons, and nuclear fire. Entire continents were blasted into irradiated deserts. Billions died. Billions more became slaves to warlords who fought endless campaigns for dominance. Humanity on Terra reverted to a state worse than the ancient Age of Iron, a time when war was constant and peace was just a pause to reload. And this was only one world. Across the galaxy, isolated colonies turned to cannibalism, demon worship, and slavery. Human psychers, born in increasing numbers, often lost control of their powers and became gateways for creatures from the warp. Whole cities fell overnight, consumed by possession and madness. The few stable empires that rose were often ruled by psychic tyrants who demanded worship as living gods. This was the Age of Strife, a time when mankind teetered on the edge of extinction, a time when every day was a struggle to survive, and most failed. But in the shadows of Terra, one man prepared to end it all. The one who had watched humanity since its birth, who had seen every rise and fall, who carried within him the wisdom of uncounted generations. Soon he would reveal himself. Soon the Emperor would step into the light, and the world would burn so that it could be born anew. From the ashes of Terra, he finally stepped into the light. The man who had watched humanity for millennia revealed himself, the Emperor of mankind. He was no ordinary warlord, towering, radiant, a being of psychic power beyond comprehension. The Emperor did not just conquer Terra, he reshaped it. Where techno-barbarians waged endless petty wars, he brought absolute unity. His armies of thunder warriors swept across the continents, annihilating rival warlords, exterminating mutants, and wiping away every trace of the old regimes. This was not a peaceful unification. Cities burned, gene forges were purged, and entire populations were erased when they refused to bend the knee. But when the war was over, Terra was united for the first time in thousands of years. The Age of Strife had ended here, if nowhere else. The Emperor then began his true project, the creation of the Primarchs, superhuman sons who would lead his armies in a war to reunite the entire human race. When they were scattered by the forces of chaos, he forged a new army, the Space Marines, modeled on his lost sons. With these warriors, clad in power armor and armed with the finest weapons of the dark age of technology, the Emperor launched the Great Crusade. World by world, humanity was reclaimed. Rogue psychers were captured or destroyed. Tech was standardized, forbidden AIs purged, and new imperial truth imposed. Billions were liberated from tyrants, but billions more died resisting imperial rule. And as the Imperium expanded, so did the Emperor's dream. A galaxy united under reason, free from superstition, protected by his warriors and guided by his immortal will. But even as the Great Crusade burned across the stars, the seeds of betrayal were already taking root. For the Emperor's greatest victory would lead to his greatest tragedy. The Great Crusade was the Emperor's masterpiece, a campaign of conquest on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Thousands of fleets set out from Terra, carrying millions of warriors, each sworn to bring humanity back into a single fold. World after world was liberated or pacified. For every planet that welcomed the Imperium as savior, there were 10 that resisted and burned. Imperial armies brought enlightenment, but also fire and death. Those who refused the imperial truth, who clung to gods and spirits were wiped away. Superstition would have no place in the new Age of Man. As the crusade expanded, the Emperor found many of his lost Primarchs. Each was given command of a Space Marine Legion, and together they brought entire sectors under Imperial control. It was an age of glory, an age of triumph. For a brief moment, it seemed that the galaxy might truly know peace again. But peace never lasts. Deep within the warp, the gods of chaos watched and plotted. They whispered into the ears of mortals and demigods alike, sowing jealousy and doubt. And among the Emperor's own sons, pride began to grow. Pride that would soon turn to bitterness. Bitterness that would become treachery. The galaxy stood united for the first time in millennia. And yet, it was never closer to tearing itself apart. For from the heart of this triumph would come a civil war so great, so catastrophic, that the Imperium would never recover. This was the price of unity, and it was only the beginning. In our next episode, we will follow the story into that darkest age, the Horus Heresy, and see how the Emperor's dream was shattered by the one he loved most. If you've enjoyed uncovering the birth of the Imperium, make sure to subscribe